Hey guys, welcome back to General Games Legacy Saturday, and we're into top 4 action now.
Yeah, it's very exciting. We've got the 12-post deck that we've seen just in last round versus Stephen Capavilla's blue-black, he likes to call it the Pimpinator.
The Pimpinator, yep, it's a strong name.
There's a lot of foils in that deck.
Yep, yeah, so he's a blue-black reanimator deck.
That's right.
With several pimps, I'm led to believe.
Yeah, I think the whole deck's in foil and then FBB jewels.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah, so...
Next level.
Exactly. Now, Jared has a very interesting out to this deck, which is the main deck Bajuka Bog. And he's got 4 crop rotations to go and find it, and then...
Nice. Yeah, that can certainly end something a bit quicker than usual.
That's right, and you've got a couple of Vesuvas as well, which you can use to... copy that if you decide to crop rotation later on as well. So,
Sure. I know that Steven's playing both Thought Seizers and Dazes and Unearths. So is he able to hit cards from Jared's hand and then reanimate them? Is that a line that we can see? That is a line
that you can see. So you will see cards like Exhume doesn't work, but Reanimate and Animate Dead will both be able to reanimate your opponent's cards from their graveyard.
All right, that'll be interesting. So we've got a Pithing Needle here. We'll see what it names. Presumably something like Gristlebrand.
Yeah,
is a good option.
It names Gristlebrand. There we go. So both players, I think, are already well aware of what the other player is on, which means that the standard turn 1 play of Pithing Needle Blind on Wasteland is not coming out from Jared's side.
Yeah. So everyone's been around each other all day at this point. 20 competitors. Few people, but still a small enough room to have a very good concept of what you're about to play, especially in the top 4.
Exactly.
So yeah. You wouldn't call Reanimator a fair deck. It's on the fairer side of combo, but it's certainly a combo deck, and it's been a little while since we've seen one of them. So here we have a careful study.
And we'll just see whether something big gets put into a graveyard, and we see the first Gristlebrand.
Certainly qualifies.
Do we have something else? Just
looks like he might be ditching a land here.
Yeah. So one of the more powerful plays Steven can get off is to get his Tidespout Tyrant into play, and that just because Jared's deck was all about advancing his board position and putting lots of big, just leveraging the land advantage that they get, it just puts him so far ahead if he can get that down and then start playing cantrips.
Okay, so Bajuka Bog hits play. So that line you were talking about earlier doesn't even need the crop rotation.
No, just
must be good to be rich. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so it looks like we're seeing an Entomb here, restocking the graveyard. Still alive to really hit.
That's right.
I imagine we'll see something like a Gristlebrand here, even though it's being named with Pithing Needle. It's still a much larger, 7/7 lifelink is
Yeah, so,
never bad, right?
And Steven has the Exhume in his hand, so it looks like he's about to try and go and use that. Whether or not Jared knows, I don't think Jared usually plays this 12-post deck, so whether he knows to use the crop rotation to get a Vesuva on the Bajuka Bog is going to be interesting. We'll see what happens here.
Yeah, he'll have to take himself off green to do it, but it could be worth it.
No, it looks like he's...
Oh, no, yeah.
Steven, I think, has gotten a little bit ahead of himself.
I know, we've just seen a Force of Will countering it. I don't know why he sacked the Bajuka Bog there. Maybe a little bit of a misplay. Yeah. But the Force of Will protects the Exhume.
So what he would be doing if he's sacking the Bajuka Bog is instead going to get a Caracas.
Ah, sure, that makes sense as well.
So I think he may have just missed the line where you could just copy it, but it does cut him off the blue and green source if he does decide to sack the Trop. So
yeah, honestly, I like Caracas a bit better there, to be honest. I think it's a better consistent out.
And most of the creatures in Steven's side of the board are going to be legendary as well.
Here's a show and tell, though.
That is a risky play against
It is an incredibly risky play, but he's only got 2 cards in hand at this point, so...
Brainstorms to dig.
Okay, so he's found a Force of Will, but he doesn't have a blue card. So he's got to reanimate there, though. So at least he's still live for more draws. However, I think that this show and tell really, found a safe place, didn't...
It has, and we can see an Emrakul on Jared's side of the board as well.
Oh, so, there we go. The Aeons are torn.
Oh, there we go.
All right, yeah, so totally outclassed there. Gristlebrand can't draw any extra cards, and we know the card's coming from Steven, so it looks like he's about to lose all his permanents.
It doesn't look like he can attack into the Gristlebrand either, so not looking good on Steven's side of the board.
No, yeah. Jared once again in a pretty strong place. I think an excellent time to take that risk on that show and tell. To be honest, I don't think it really could have ended any better than this, and we see them pack it up. Yeah, even if Steven had another fatty in hand, the Emrakul's going to outclass it. And in this, in this case, it's just you're dead to the Grizzlebrand. You got a couple of turns, but you're probably not going to get your land strategy to work. So I think that was a good line, and it just went way over the top.
Jared's deck divider appears to be a power play that quite what do you call it? It's quite fitting considering how that game just ended.
It was absolute power play. I saw a moment's peace in his sideboard there. That's a pretty cool card to be able to bring in, and I don't know if it'll come in here, but it will stop another 7 cards getting drawn possibly. True. So it's got some options here. I imagine we're just going a bit lower to the ground. A couple of disruptive pieces, but really we just want to get him dead.
There will be a couple of surgical extractions floating around in the board. You're just wanting to get rid of the things that you're never going to be able to cast in these games. So stuff like the Ugins that you can just see there will come out, and there we go. We've got, looks like a couple of surgicals are coming in instead.
Yep. Just, high impact sideboard cards only. Not really trying to take any pieces out of getting the lands together. And on the other side, we see an Iona.
An Iona, some Abrupt Decays, some Pithing Needles, and something else I'm not sure of. So with Steven's side, it doesn't matter what your opponent's doing. You're always bringing in the anti-graveyard permanent hate cards because there's no way you can really get around them once they're on the board.
Yeah, so no matter what, Abrupt Decay is coming in.
That's right.
And then Iona as well, I imagine, is a frequent sideboard card to come in, especially with so many Brainstorm decks floating around today.
Yeah, so blue's quite powerful and green's quite powerful. It just see which way it goes.
Yeah. I think he'll love to get to a point where he can name green and take Jared off Primeval Titan card that it really bridges the gap between a reasonable amount of mana and an absurd amount of mana.
Yeah. So I can see there that Steven's taking out the Exhumes because he doesn't want Jared getting anything big back from his graveyard. He's also taken out Force of Will though, so he's just
shaving on Force of Will is interesting here.
So Jared is playing quite fair outside of the show and tell, so it looks like we're just gonna try and be a better combo deck.
Yeah, okay. How do you feel about that? Would you be taking your Force of Wills out here?
I think I would be playing scared of show and tell personally, but I'm not the biggest expert with the Pimpinator strategies. Steven bringing in one of his own show and tells as well.
Interesting. All right. Well, it looks like these guys are putting their heads down and ready to charge at each other, and we'll see who really comes off the victor.
Yeah, that's very interesting strategies on both sides, I think. So could be a very different game that we see here.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any play draw consideration for Force of Will in these sort of matches, or?
I don't think so. It's one of the ones where you just you either have it or you don't.
You need to do it or you don't need to do it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't come off too badly for him not having Force of Will. Always a brave move, taking it out. Often correct, and just operating without the safety net.
Yeah, it's just so much card disadvantage when you do have it, and with the recursion effects that Jared can play, just like the search effects, it's something that can be good to trim. But as I said, I think some of the bigger plays that Jared can make would make me want to have it in still.
Oh, we'll see if it matters.
Yeah, so Steven drawing one of the show and tells anyway.
Yep. See if he's got a good combination of lands and spells and is able to keep. I see an Entomb in there. I'll tell you what, this Pimp deck makes it a little hard to see on the hand count because it's resistant to lightning.
So leading decides to keep by the look of it, and shortcuts the Thoughtseize.
Yeah,
and we'll see exactly what Jared's decided to keep on his side.
Yeah, it looks like there's some lands and some fatties. He's going to surgical in response, but look at that.
Yeah, so taking away one of the polluted deltas from the deck.
Yeah.
And gives him a chance to just look through immediately after the first sideboarded game and have a look at exactly how your opponent has decided to sideboard, so it might not even be that much about taking the blue to Delta as it is about seeing what's in your opponent's deck instead.
Absolutely. Quite possibly the highest value time to do it. You've just sideboarded turn 1. And you're going to get Thoughtseize anyway. I think that probably factors in is that the Surgical is likely going to be taken by the Thoughtseize in this case. It looks like his hand is full of lands and fatties. And there we go.
Wow, there we go. So
it hits the Ulamog, a card that wouldn't have been that relevant straight up. And he does have his Caracas in hand as well.
Yeah, so that's quite a risky keep on Jared's side. He was leaning very, very heavily on that Surgical Extraction. So...
Yeah, it seems like his Disruption has, it's basically just Caracas at this point.
Yeah. Well, that's not a Caracas. That's a
Tabernacle.
Tabernacle.
It's Tabernacle. Oh, my bad. Sorry, guys.
So yeah, essentially Jared's just going to be drawing off the top, and I feel like Steven's very favoured now that we're here. I do believe he only kept a 1-land hand though, so we'll see exactly what happens.
Yeah, I think I saw a careful study in there as well. So he does have, outs, but... Of course, the amount of lands in his deck just did go down a little bit as well.
This is true. And Jared opens on the Cloud Post.
Powerful 1 mana producing Cloud Post, yeah.
Yep.
Alright, here's careful study. Does he hit his land drop? Seems like he's hit a Grizzlebrand and a Chancellor there.
Yeah, well, Counselor's not going to be quite as effective with Jared's hand full of spells, but it will slow him down a little bit. Lands, I should say.
Yep. Okay. Looks like he's drawn a Crop Rotation for the turn.
There we go. That's one of the few non-foils in the deck, but it is still a Guru Swamp.
So... Yeah, well done. Okay, looks like a Collective Brutality. This is going to threaten to take away that Crop Rotation. So it kind of seems like you might as well do it. And, if this resolves, and it looks like it is, it seems like he'll be going for
the
Bojuka Bog. Yeah. Seems likely in this situation.
Yep.
Clearing out those 2 big threats in the graveyard.
And just slowing Steven's deck down that extra turn while he digs for some action.
There we go. So, interactive game so far. Collective Brutality, of course, ends up missing because there's no spells in the hand, just lands.
And on Steven's side...
it looks like he drew a Vesuva.
Oh, that's quite good.
Yeah, so he's got a redo on that Bojuka Bog. I'll tell you what, I think in these games, Jared's very happy for no one to do anything. Just make his land drops. Time is good. It's on his side.
Well, we've just drawn a Reanimate, and there's an Ulamog on the other side of the table. So that's quite a nice play to have.
Yeah, it seems strong. Puts it in an interesting situation, and I think that's Jared getting marginally punished for going for Bojuka Bog instead of Caracas.
Yeah, possibly. I think where the game was at that point, you still want to get rid of the cards because it reduces the options that he has rather than if you get the Caracas instead, Steven might be able to work out a way to play around it by not getting a legendary creature back.
Yeah. So it's a margin call. You would say the Bojuka Bog for you would be the correct play?
I think so.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Steven does now have that 10-10, so that might be some confirmation bias away from me.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. Sometimes it's the right play, and then you get punished for it anyway.
Definitely. So Jared just grabbing an extra land before the rest of them disappear.
Yeah. So there's an attack trigger on Ulamog, of course, which exiles the top 20 cards of your opponent's library. So that potentially, because it's so many cards, 20 cards, it actually kills some of these utility cards we'll probably see flipped over here. Yep. Who knows if we see the Caracas or anything that's actually important for this deck to, tutor up to deal with this Ulamog. Of course, if he doesn't deal with it this very turn, it's gonna get him down to 0 life pretty quickly. So
I saw a Caracas and a Grafdigger's Cage floating through there, and couple of show and tells and a Primeval Titan. So
yeah, I think there was a Crop Rotation in there as well, so that's no longer in his set of outs if there is another Caracas in his deck. Again, sorry guys, we don't have the deck list for Jared. Would have been helpful given how long he's been on camera, but it looks like he's missed there anyway, and I think this will quickly go to a game 3.
Yeah, the Warping Whale is quite nice, and it hits a lot of the...
Yeah, didn't miss the trigger. Well played, Steven. Okay, so that's
and slides the Ulamog back over to the other side.
Yeah, this guy belongs to you. Make sure you put it back in. I want to reanimate it next game.
So the sorcery, the Warping Whale hits quite a lot of the spells that Steve is actually playing there, so it can hit Extreme Reanimate, are both sorcery spells, as are the Shaman Tell, so that's quite a nice card for Jared to just keep in for his side.
Yep.
Based on what you saw there, would you be looking at changing any cards from your deck?
Look, it's interesting. I think the Force of Wills will probably come back in.
Yep.
Like I think it was a bit of risky for maneuver, and we can see them being placed face down here. And the other thing is that we didn't see much disruption in terms of permanents to disrupt the graveyard from Jared. So there is a line here where you can go, hey, Force of Will is a marginal out to those cards anyway, and I didn't see any game 2, so possibly he's not even playing them. We know he's on Surgical now, and you only have so much space in your sideboard, of course. So with that additional information, you can make another decision for game 3.
Yeah, so there was the Surgicals, and I think we saw the one Grafdigger's Cage. It looks like it is a play draw thing, because Stephen has taken out some of the dazes, it looks like, for the Force of Wills he's bringing in.
Well, that does make sense, I guess. So even though Force of Will, by all accounts, is a very similar card, play or draw, Daze is not. Because if you're behind, if you're on the draw, paying the 1 extra mana becomes far easier for your opponent. So obviously it loses value a lot quicker than it would be if you're on the play. So I think that's reasonable to drop the dazes on the draw. Whether or not you would be playing the Force of Wills the whole time, I guess, is another issue entirely. So he's left in his Abrupt Decays. So if we do see that Grafdigger's Cage, you're still playing it out there.
Yeah, it's just seeing how scared you are with the deck, and that's a lot of hate pieces in a short period of time. He's only got a Vesuva for mana, which means if he does keep that, he's copying Steven's lands rather than his own.
Yeah, that seems like an easy mulligan to me. With a deck like that, you want to make sure you make your first 3 land drops at least. Especially when you are playing 27 lands, so you're reasonably able to top deck. But if you miss on turn 2, that's pretty much the game. So
yeah, there are 2 or 3 of them which don't tap for mana, so it counts a little bit lower than it looks like. But
yeah, sure.
Still wanting something better than 3 Pithing Needles by the look of it.
Yeah, it does lose value rather quickly in those sort of occasions. Okay, that seems like a good hand from Jared. We've got a Warping Whale, a Crop Rotation, a Forest, and I think a Cloud Post, backed up by Primeval Titan. So we could be, seeing a pretty early large creature here. And there's a Chancellor of the Annex revealed from Steven's hand.
Pre-game action, which means that the first spell gets countered unless that player plays 1. So he would be quite happy with that.
Yeah. Obviously, that's the reason it gets played in that deck. You get a little bit of extra disruption along with one of your fatties.
Yeah.
So, it's a 5/6 fly, which as far as fat creatures are concerned in Magic, not that good, but just any amount of disruption that you can get for free in a format like Legacy is always good.
And there it goes back to the graveyard, and it's great because it's not a legendary creature as well, so he's playing around Jared's Caracas as well by having that card.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of the better large creatures in the format happen to be legends, as always, because they're the coolest. But yeah, the Chancellor just diversifies a little bit there.
Yeah, so Steven plays out a Petal, thinks of it, and then passes the turn.
A very pimped Lotus Petal, yeah.
Yeah, looking at the Masterpiece in this case. And he's got the dice as a reminder there. I'm not sure whether that's just for the Council trigger or whether that's something else as well.
Okay, yeah. So we've got Entomb here. So we'll probably see him get his other fatty, so Gristlebrand.
Gristlebrand again.
The biggest and the baddest. Give him, a diversity of threats there. Be interesting to see. A little bit of better look at his hand here. I'm not sure if he's got a reanimation spell at this stage. Either way, the Entomb's pretty good value.
So just setting up the graveyard for the time that he does draw it, you think?
Absolutely. It looks like he's having a think here. It could be that he's got... No? All right, we've gone for the Gristlebrand. Whatever other utility cards he has in part of his Entomb package is... it seems like he thinks it's just worse.
Yeah, well, there was the...
and here's the Reanimate.
The Iona that we bought in earlier, so...
No, Crop Rotation.
Crop Rotation pays for it with the Cloud Post for the 1 extra.
But it looks like it's getting forced here. So Force of Will... taking down not only the Crop Rotation and then the ensuing Bajuka Bog, but also getting rid of that Cloud Post.
Yeah, so lots of work
And-
there. 3 for 1 again.
3 for 1, and the Grizzlebrand hits the battlefield. Steven's on 11 life, which means that, in most cases, you can just draw this 7 straight away.
Yeah.
And especially when you know what your opponent's on, and it's one of these big mana decks. You're not worried about getting burnt out or
Yeah, there's nothing
whatever.
that's going to do that 4 damage on the
No.
spot.
So I think the best thing he can probably find here is another Force of Will, something like that he doesn't need to have mana up to disrupt whatever Jared's going to do. But with this Grizzlebrand on board, it's looking very, very good for Steven.
Definitely. So Stephen can just sit back and rest on that, and hopefully try and counter anything that Jared might do to get himself back in the game.
Hopefully we can have a look at these cards again. The pimping of the deck is really just
We've got the,
really preventing us from seeing stuff. But
it's interesting.
a
He's
very
got
cool deck.
the very front card. I think is one of the new Jace in the San Diego Comic Con.
that would make sense. That's why it's so dark. Yeah.
Just can't see a thing there.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that'll be Jazz Friend's Prodigy.
That's the one. And,
Yeah, the one that you can actually reanimate and stuff, and it is reasonably good in these decks.
Yeah,
It's a
well-
little bit of play in Modern in the same sort of decks as well.
It's essentially just playing a little bit slower as a Merfolk Looter, and then so much value when you flip it afterwards.
Yeah, able to flash back things like reanimate out of your graveyard, along with your brainstorms and your show and tell, stuff like that, just to give you a little bit of redundancy and a way to sort of marry the pieces between combo cards and creatures, and get the deck to function a little bit more.
Yeah. So
Of course, quite slow though.
looks like he is about to play it out anyway.
Yep. Yeah. So it's another turn from activating, but this just gives him some insurance that if this Grizzlebrand does go away, he's still got something he can do. He can still find more cards, and until his graveyard is exiled, if that does happen, has access to another reanimate.
Absolutely.
But it's looking very good for him either way.
Yeah, Jared just isn't drawing enough cards which do anything here.
Little look at Eye of Ugin there. Make sure nothing's too bad is going to happen from that.
Like, it might make a cheaper thought knots here, but we're not seeing the bigger Eldrazi yet, I don't think.
Yeah, not to mention that Jared actually can't cast the Thought Knots here because he doesn't have access to colorless mana,
This is true.
which is it's a bit of a fun one every time that comes up.
Yeah, he is playing 8 or 9 different colorless lands, so it's fairly consistent.
Yeah.
As much as the non-Eldrazi decks are, but
And we seen our owner hit the graveyard from Entomb there. I wonder if we'll see that Jace flip and flash back the reanimate.
at the moment, I think it would be better to be naming blue on it, just because a lot of the removals, a lot of things which might get the Caracas back to hand would be blue, but on not the Caracas, sorry, the Grizzlebrand back to hand.
Yep.
But green will also obviously turn off crop rotation as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting question here. I think it's certainly a crop rotation versus any potential bounce effects.
Yep.
With both fatties in play and Jared at 6 life, so dead to both creatures. I think that I would be picking green.
And,
Okay, it seems like he did name green with it, just to turn off that crop rotation. Given that he's got a good window to win this game anyway. Although both being good choices here.
Yeah, and then he discards Show and Tell to Jace, and we'll see exactly what's about to happen here.
Yeah, absolutely. This Jace just, still insurance here. Doesn't even go up with it.
Doesn't use it.
And there we go. That's the match. So Stephen Capavilla wins 2-1. The Pimpinator taking down 12 Post.
Yeah. So just showing the power of the combo deck and just being able to do that much sooner than what the 12 Post deck could. And managed to play successfully around the Bajuka Bog as well.
Hey guys, welcome back to the booth. We see Jared have a very good tournament, finally, crashing out in top 4 against a deck that I think that he wasn't really. You don't really play 12 Post because you want to beat Reanimator. You play 12 Post because you want to beat all those control decks we saw him beat up on today. I think some lines that he had there were really lively the entire time, but just Stephen was just able to have redundancy and pull those fatties into play and
Just
put
got
those
there
games away
faster.
pretty quickly. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Look, it's something where there's a lot of just very specific cards that Jared has in his deck, and I think it could have gone either way, but otherwise, yeah, well done to Stephen.
Yeah.
I think that's the first loss that Jared had this day, so...
Yeah. Had a very good tournament. Top 4 finish, not too bad. We'll see Stephen in the final. All right, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you for the finals of Legacy Saturday here at General Games.